What's up guys, Jeff from Sorta Healthy here. Today we're back to talking about programming. More specifically, we'll be focusing on 5 rules that I swear by when designing programs for my clients. I recently released 2 pretty in-depth programming videos, and one of my main goals with this video is to tie up a few loose ends or just cover some simple but powerful program design concepts that I might have missed in those previous 2 videos. Those videos cover detailed systems, which are free to download and use by the way if you want to. But this video will be about very simple rules that you can take and use right away with your clients. Basically, I have a code that I follow when training clients, and maybe after watching this video, you will too. All I ask before we get into all of that is that you consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. Those things really help this channel to grow, and this channel is a free resource for all fitness professionals. Thank you so much for that support, everyone. It is very appreciated. Before I get into my programming rules, what is a programming or session design rule that you follow when training clients? Make sure to let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. My first rule when it comes to programming is to keep sessions interesting but not random. Any okay trainer can throw a decent workout together that challenges a client. Only a good trainer can create a plan based on a client's goals, adapt that plan session to session, and eventually get their client to the desired outcome in a reasonable time frame. As I said in a recent programming video, most trainers are just out there winging it. They don't have a long-term plan for getting their client from the starting point to the finish line. In fact, I'd bet most trainers don't even have a great idea of what they're going to do in their client's next session. These trainers barely plan or don't plan at all, and you know what they say about that. If you don't plan, plan to fail. So how do you prevent yourself from being one of those trainers? Well, you make sure your workouts are interesting but not random. If I see you training a client, you should be able to explain to me why every single exercise, set, rep, etc. is in that workout. You should be able to explain how all of those things help get your client closer to their goals. There should be very little randomness to your sessions. Always have a plan and be ready to come up with a backup plan too. When I'm saying a client's workout should be interesting as well, what I'm saying is you shouldn't be doing the exact same stuff all of the time. Never forget, most clients who pay for personal training aren't into exercising. We do have to do our best to keep things fresh. That said, not all exercises are created equal. Some are very simple and effective, and others are flashy, and if we're being honest, kind of gimmicky. You generally want more of the simple and effective exercises in your routines, only sprinkling in those flashy ones that tend to be more style over substance here and there. Even if you're having your client squat often, as you should, it doesn't mean that your client should be doing the same variation of the move all of the time though. Be ready to mix it up, but don't sacrifice movement quality. This is something that I cover more in depth in my other 2 recent programming videos. My next programming rule is to start things off on the easier side and then build up the intensity from there. Every once in a while you'll get a client who thinks they're much tougher, fitter, and skilled than they actually are. This client thinks they're hot, but 9 times out of 10, they're not. Regardless of where a client is starting out, you're pretty much always better off starting things off a bit on the easier side and then slowly ramping up the intensity from there. Amateur trainers think they need to beat the hell out of their clients to prove a point. What they're saying there, whether they mean to or not, is, you're out of shape and you need my help. That's a trainer saying that to a client, by the way, if it wasn't clear. Any good trainer knows that they don't have to crush a client or prospect to show their value. They have other ways of doing that. So when you're working with a new client, remember you're better off starting things off on the easier side. When working with a client who's a total beginner, that might look like doing mostly body weight or very light exercises for a good while in the beginning. Even when working with a possibly more advanced client, you're still better off starting out sessions a little bit on the easier side. Let's say I have a fairly fit client who's just started working with me, and they're looking to take their fitness to the next level. Let's also say that this client wants to work on strengthening their lower body in particular. In that client's first session, their warm-up might look a little something like this. We might kick things off with some foam rolling or self-myofascial release of the hamstrings and the hip flexors. After that, we might move into some walking quad stretches. And then after that, we might move into some of these walking hamstring stretches. And then after that, we'll round out this dynamic warm-up with about 15 or so body bodyweight squats. If that client's squat form looks good, aka they're keeping their weight back onto their heels and hips, their knees are tracking over their toes, their back is flat, when we get to squats within the session itself beyond the warm-up, I might want to throw some goblet squats at my client with a respectable but not crazy weight. I'll want to challenge this more physically capable client, but not kill them. First, I'll demonstrate the upcoming exercise, and then as I pass the dumbbell to my client for the goblet squats, I might even say something like, let's try out this weight and see how you feel as you're doing these goblet squats. We're aiming for 12 reps here, where the last few get pretty tough. If the last few get challenging, we can keep that weight for the next set. If it never got challenging, we can up the weight a bit for set number 2. Communicate with your client often to figure out if you should raise the weight, lower the weight, or keep it the same between sets. Of course, you can manipulate other things like number of reps as well. Just remember, it's better to start off a bit too easy than too hard. We can always ramp up the intensity as we go. I'm probably not going to spend too much time talking about my next rule because I've covered it a lot on this channel already. That said, my next programming rule is to plan sessions around the compound lifts. Unless injury prevents it, in any given week, I'm going to have my clients do some knee dominant lower body compound exercises like squats and lunges, some hip hinging exercises like deadlifts, some vertical pulling exercises like lat pull downs, some horizontal pulling moves like rows, some overhead pressing, and also some horizontal pressing like push-ups or the bench press. Accessory exercises, which would include things like the single joint exercises you're seeing here, or the core moves you're seeing now, should be planned around those compound exercises. I recommend trying to keep accessory moves to a minimum, but of course, it always comes down to your client's capabilities and needs. My next rule of programming is that you need to keep track of client sessions and progress. Next time you're walking around the gym floor and you see some trainers doing their thing, check to see how many of them are taking notes as they're training their clients. If they're not taking notes, at least one, but up to 3 things are true about the trainer. 1, they're an amateur and they don't know what they're doing. 2, they simply don't care that much about their job. Basically, they're lazy. 3, they have so few clients that they don't need to take notes to keep tabs on their clients' progress. Again, if they're not recording their clients' workouts, at least one of those things will be true. Most likely multiple things. How do I know this? Well, if you have anything more than a small handful of clients, there's no way you could possibly memorize where every client is session to session when it comes to sets, reps, exercises, progress, etc. The simple solution to this? Plan out your client sessions and take notes as they're going through their workouts. You can't progress your client effectively if you're not taking the proper notes along the way. Don't be that amateur trainer who's winging it. Have a plan. I broke down exactly how I plan out client sessions and progress their programs over time. You guys can use the same forms that I do. Everything is free to download. Again, I cover those systems in detail in these other 2 programming videos right here. My last programming rule is to never forget that injury prevention and the client's goals are the 2 most important things to focus on. I'm going to repeat that. Everything else is less important than these 2 things. Obviously, the reason that you have a job in the first place is because your client has a goal. Most likely a few different goals varying in importance. Sometimes I'll see trainers make these long, drawn-out, elaborate programs. Honestly, oftentimes these programs are pretty decent, but they're missing one key thing: extra focus on the client's goals. If a client is focused on weight loss, which most clients are, your exercise programming for that weight loss client might not look too different than it would compared to a client who's mainly focused on improving their strength. However, even if their lifting routines are fairly similar, the way you interact with the weight loss client should be significantly different compared to the strength client. The weight loss client has hired you to help them lose weight. Duh. For better or worse, weight loss mainly comes down to dietary habits. In certain states, like New York, which is a green state, you can legally give clients dietary advice. That means you can recommend calorie counts, macros, or most other things you deem important when it comes to helping that client reduce their weight. Having said all that, avoid sending meal plans to clients for multiple reasons. Now, if you're in a yellow or red state, legally you can't give your client any dietary advice. There is a little bit of a loophole with all of this though. No matter what state state you're in, you can do things like recommend that your client uses an app like MyFitnessPal to help control their portions. You can also print off articles from places like Precision Nutrition to help steer your client in the right direction. You can also do weekly weigh-ins with your clients who are focused on weight loss. This is a surprisingly powerful form of extra accountability. If your client knows a weigh-in is coming, they're going to be just a little bit more careful with their food. These 3 strategies are my go-to options with any client, and again, you can utilize them in any state in the US. In yellow or red states, you just shouldn't give any feedback or opinions. You'll have to rely more on those outside sources. Also, if you get a person who has any medical issues, at that point, just refer that person to a registered dietitian. If you live in another country, make sure to check your local nutrition laws. Let's say you have a client who wants to tone the back of their arms in addition to losing weight. Well, at that point, you'd be silly to not throw in a little extra tricep work every week. Even if that's not the best way to get the job done, their perception is very relevant. Of course, let your client know that the weight loss component there is going to be the more important thing when it comes to achieving that toned back of the arm look that they're looking for, but still. Also, preventing injury being right up there with your client's goals is a no-brainer. If they get hurt, they might not be able to train and achieve the rest of their goals anyways. Therefore, don't do anything silly. Be smart, err on the side of caution, and help to keep people injury-free. Never forget, goals and injury prevention come first. Anyways, do you guys have any programming questions? Whether they have to do with this stuff or the stuff from the other 2 videos, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. I always appreciate hearing what you guys have to say. And if you haven't done so already, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel, because both of those things really do help the channel to grow, and that does allow me to create more free content for all of you. Thanks for watching, everyone, and until next time, stay sort healthy.